Yeah, I mean, toward the end of stage 2, when Bubba was going to get 0 points and it looked like Ty was going to win that stage, it did look for a little bit there like Bubba could have lost it maybe 2 ways. And he got saved a little bit by the fact that Gibbs got in that crash at the end of stage 2, unfortunately resulted in a huge right front impact in the turn 4 wall for Ryan Blaney. I'm not the only one who noticed this, Kyle, but it was certainly reminiscent, unfortunately, of the 2001 Daytona 500 where Earnhardt crashed there. The difference, of course, being now in 2023, there was a safer barrier there, and that safer barrier gave a lot. Ryan Blaney did an interview with Marty Snyder. I think he tweeted a little bit later as well, or posted on X social media that like, hey, I'm okay. What did you make of that in terms of the safety advancements and that safer barrier being there for Ryan Blaney?
Yeah, listen, man. I think that wreck was. I would hate to see that film laid over the films of Dale's and of Neil Bonnet's and some of that, because that's tire tracks. They're in exactly the same place. The safer barrier continues to show itself to be, if not the biggest advancement in motorsports, it's tied with number 1 or number 2 right there. It is phenomenal. If you guys get a chance to watch it in slow motion, watch how far the safer barrier goes in on impact, but watch the ripple of the safer barrier as it comes at you off of turn 4 and as the wall goes away from you, just as he hits it. Just watch that ripple effect. It sends that energy 50, 100 yards in both directions. And that's what the safer barrier does. It moves the energy, it dissipates the energy, and it sends it in another direction and not to the driver's body. If you go back and watch that, I don't think I ever saw a flame come out of Ryan's tailpipe, which means he never got out of the gas. That car turned so fast and so quick and so violent and went straight into the wall that he never had an opportunity to take his foot off the gas or put his foot on the brake or to react to it. He just never had a shot. That was it in the conversation. So to watch him catch his breath on that in-car camera and nod that he's okay and start talking on the radio, that's something that we didn't see 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago. And it's huge. And to NASCAR, to everybody that developed that, to all forms of motorsports, if you race at a place that doesn't have that, you need these safer barriers are so critical. But that was a hit that if we didn't have what happened later, we would still be talking about that today. And I don't think we need to take that off that A list, because that's something that needs to be analyzed again. I'm sure the car will be analyzed, but the car seemed to hold up well. Everybody around the cockpit itself seemed to hold up. Everything did what it was supposed to do. And I think, again, that's back to NASCAR. And I will sing their praises when I think they need to be sung, and I will go the other way when I think it needs to go the other way. But, they've done a lot they've taken bars out. They've softened things in the chassis from the rear impacts and the front impacts. And I think that's an example of being that willingness for NASCAR to look, to change, to be able to adjust, and to change these cars even in mid-season. I think that we saw that in action yesterday with Ryan Blaney.
And unfortunately, as you mentioned, that's not the wreck everybody's going to be talking about coming out. I say unfortunately meaning like that we're not talking about that. And like you said, the advancements of the safer barrier. Obviously, you never want to talk about wrecks, period. But the wreck everybody's going to remember from this race was Ryan Preece bringing out the final caution of the race. Huge barrel roll, Kyle. Estimates that he probably flipped about 10 times, and that Preece's car seemed to accelerate and doing those pirouettes as he was going, whipping through the grass. We had a really good discussion, I thought, after Ryan Newman's wreck in the 2020 Daytona 500 on this podcast, in which you talked about how it shouldn't ever be lost that this is a really dangerous endeavor, that auto racing is always going to be inherently dangerous, and that needs to be respected, that needs to be recognized, and that maybe sometimes, God forbid we ever have another fatality in NASCAR, but it's been 22 years since there's been one. And I think sometimes that does get lost in all of the discussion about safety and safer barriers and the new car, that like it can always happen. Unfortunately, I know that you took little bit of guff on social media about this. Um, I guess like my question to you about this is when you hear from those experts on social media and their reaction to your reaction, I mean, have people become too inured to maybe the racing being too safe? I mean, drivers seem to have a pact and understanding that every time they strap, they might not be unbuckling themselves to get out. Like, should fans somehow? I mean, should we, I don't know if we should ask fans to make the same pact with themselves when they're watching races, but is that part of the bargain of being a racing fan?
Yeah, I don't know. That's a great question. That's a great question. And, I think we just get complacent, okay,
Yeah.
and attitudes and a lot of things, and yeah, I guess what got me going yesterday was I get all these tweets, and I'm looking at stuff, and I'm hearing comments, and I'm listening to things, and people are like, "We are stunned by this. We cannot believe this happened. We are stunned."
Yeah.
Well, I don't know what world you live in. You strap a guy in a car and ask him to go run 200 miles an hour in a pack of 30 or 40 cars. This is going to happen. You're going to have these things. I think every driver that sits in one of these cars, Corey LaJoie said it, when the Newman accident and when some of those accidents happen, we understand that it's a calculated risk. We're on this side of it or we're on this side of it. And that's the way it is. And sometimes in the past, we walk away. And sometimes in the past, people that we love and people that we cared about didn't walk away. So we understand that. And I think every driver that straps in one of these things understands that. I think fans forget that. Yeah. Fans forget that. I said it before. I grew up at a time in the sport with my dad where guys went to the racetrack and never come home. And it was common. And when I say common, it didn't happen every other week. It didn't happen, but it wasn't 23 years between fatalities. I will tell you that. And when you're 7 or 8 years old and you're watching your dad, you begin to have a huge respect for what racing is and what it can do and what it can be. So I look at it and I'm like, why are you stunned? You're just because we have safer barriers, just because we have the next gen car, just because we have the Hans collar, just because we have all this stuff, it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything. It lessens it and it brings that down and it brings the odds. It puts the odds more in the favor of the driver or moves them to the side of the driver. But the weakest link in the car is the driver. Understand that. The weakest link in a car that runs 200 miles an hour is the human body. And that's how simple it is. And the weakest link a lot of times in the human body is the brainstem. And that's why we have so many concussions and why we've had so many things happen. That's just facts. I can't change that. But the fact that as a fan, we don't believe that, or we don't see that, or we don't expect that bothers me a little bit, because I'm like, you got to understand what these guys put on the line every single week. And I think we just take it for granted that they're just going to climb out. They're going to walk away. They're going to tip of the hat, wave to the crowd. And Monday morning, the sun's going to come up and the world's going to go on. And it's not always been that way. And it's not always going to be that way. It'll happen at some point in time. It's in the cards. It's in the odds. All we can do as an organization at NASCAR, all we can do as a driver, as a sport, is try to lessen those chances and do as much as we can. It's that stupid saying, safety never takes a holiday, man. You got to be on top of it 24/7, 365. And that's what NASCAR has done. And I think we saw it with the Ryan Preece car. If I go to the Ryan Preece accident, for me, it brought back John Anderson in 81 and Rusty Wallace in 83 and Rusty Wallace in 93. My dad at Daytona. I mean, these cars, but the thing that fascinated me about Ryan's car was it seemed to pick up speed as it got up in the air. And if I remember, and I don't remember clearly, I know back to 91 or 81 or 83. But when you look at things, a lot of times as they do things, they begin to slow down. As the accident happens, it kind of drags itself down. This accident, as he came out of the pack, it seemed to accelerate. It was like a hurricane over cold water. It was picking up speed. It needed warm water to slow itself down, and it just didn't slow itself down. And the last 2 hits were hard hits. When he hit on his top, up until that time, they were just rolls. It was violent looking. And listen, I don't want to be in that car. Don't get me wrong, but it was probably more violent looking than it actually was in a lot of ways. But the hits were hard. And it was good to see him get out of the car. But NASCAR will obviously they're going to take that car. They're going to look at the parts that failed. They're going to look at how the parts failed, whether it was the suspension as it broke away, as things happened. They're going to look at why things didn't break away, why things did break away. It will be the same meticulous process and investigation that the FFA goes through in a plane crash to determine why something happens. And so don't expect the answers to all this stuff by Friday. It's not going to happen because they'll go through it and analyze everything. And that's where NASCAR is today. That's not where they were 46 years ago. That's not where they were 23 years ago. And that's not where they were in 2001 at Daytona. It's not where they were in 2000 at New Hampshire with Adam. That's just not where they were. But that's where they are now. And I think every driver should take comfort in that. But it was a violent accident. And it was horrendous to watch. And as a competitor to watch that, and to see that car sitting there when these guys had to keep riding by it lap after lap after lap, and see the ambulance still sitting there, and see that Ryan hadn't gotten out of the car yet, that gives you a bad feeling in the pit of your stomach as a driver, because you're still strapped in one of these things, and you got to go at it again because they're going to drop the green flag at some point in time. So I think everybody there was that moment when it's, which way is this going to go? And when he climbs out and they're able to continue, it changed the tenor of the race for sure. And it changed the attitudes and some of the comments that were made post race, and it should have because it's a sobering moment for a garage area.
Hi, I'm Parker Kligerman. For more access like this from Pit Road, be sure to click and subscribe to the Motorsports on NBC YouTube channel.